much for taking the time to join us today at Stanford. I am Radhika Shah. I'm co-president of one of the convening organizations, Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs. And I'd love to welcome you all on behalf of Stanford Angels and the other convening organization, Akshaya Patra. We have two amazing speakers today. I'm very excited about this event. But first things first, I want to start by thanking the Alumni Center staff for all their help, as well as amazing volunteers. So please stand up, volunteers. So, come on, Dora. Okay. So, I think I'm missing somewhere, but this is Dora at Google, Ahmed, Vajiha, Avisha, Karishma. They've just been amazing rock stars, and the more I know from everything. Thank you. We can't do this without you. And we're brilliant volunteers, yeah. And with that, I wanted to just take a minute to introduce Stanford Angels. Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs is a club here at the Alumni Association. We have over 1,000 members from faculty, students, and Stanford alumni. We come together to advance tech innovation and entrepreneurship. We started with angel investment by alum and Stanford students, and that's still a core part of what we do, angel investment within the community. We also do events like this, Thought Leadership Series, and most recently, we are a Stanford family, where we've also been doing a lot of work around how can we be of value not just to the Stanford community, but also to society, especially with the advent of the Sustainable Development Goals. We've been doing a lot of talks like this, and we're getting ready to do a lot more now, initiatives looking at how can our tech innovation community play a role. So this talk is very exciting and very appropriate. I want to take a second to introduce the leadership team members at Stanford Angels. Fellow co-president Alan. Alan, could you get Alan Chu? Thank you, Alan. And our leadership team member Rekha Pai, Rekha. And awesome. And with that, we want to quickly get through introductions and talking about the co-conveners and get to our star speakers here. I would like to invite Gitika from Akshaya Patra, Vice President at Akshaya Patra, an amazing organization focused on sustainable development goals around hunger, education, health, and tech innovation at scale, transforming the lives of children. I'll let Gitika tell us more about that.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Good evening. I will not stand too long between you and our amazing distinguished speakers here, Desh and Andrew. I've been talking to a lot of you, and you heard this from me. I will just take a few minutes to introduce what Akshaya Patra is and why we are here today. Akshaya Patra is the world's largest midday meal program, serving 1.6 million children every day in 13,000 schools across 12 states in India. We are a public-private partnership where in just $15, we feed one child for an entire year, 235 school days, with the help of the government. The cost of each meal comes to about 15 cents. So why Akshaya Patra and how do we fit into SDGs, which is Sustainable Development Goals? India is home to 1/3 of world's malnourished children, which makes it about 61 million children. 40% of these children who are enrolled in public school system in India drop out in elementary school to supplement their family income and become child laborers. Akshaya Patra fits very well into the SDGs, which is zero hunger and access to education. So with feeding these kids, keeping them in school, we are trying to reach these two goals. We believe that no child should be deprived of education because of hunger. Sometimes these kids, this is the only meal that they're getting during the day. So that's the reason they stay in school. The impact of this program has been amazing, and we can go on and on about that, but keeping kids in school, girl child not getting married at the age of 30, enrolled in India's public school system. And in spite of our amazing scale, and in spite of our low cost, which is 15 cents per meal, we have been able to solve 1.5% of the problem. So that is why we are here to talk more about AI and tech innovations. Interestingly enough, Akshaya Patra served its first billionth meal in 2012, and 4 years later, we served our 4 years later, in 2016, we served our second billionth meal. And this is what we're going to discuss here in this room today. We aspire to serve 5 billionth meal very soon. Tech innovation and AI should help us. How and when? We're going to figure out the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Gitika. So with that, we will jump into a fireside chat. And I'll provide a little bit of context, and then we'll hear from, I'll introduce our speakers, and we'll hear from them. So some of you may know already about the Sustainable Development Goals. But in case some of you don't, just for context, in 2015, all world leaders came together, and what was a miracle, all of them, along with the UN, ratified what are being called the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 extremely ambitious goals. These are goals such as eliminate poverty, eliminate hunger across the world, quality education for all, quality healthcare access, energy for all, sustainable development, tackling climate change, saving life on land, on water. Essentially, these goals unify human rights and climate change, tackle inequality and dignity for all, and climate change, and recognizing these things are related. They're not isolated. As we heard with Akshaya Patra, all these goals are related. To achieve them, solving one in an isolated manner is not enough. And the goals now provide a universal framework. For the first time, we have a framework that all world leaders have agreed to for social change, which is comprehensive. And there's a recognition that just the UN, government can't do this alone. They will need civil society, philanthropy, private sector, all of us to come together to achieve these goals. And so this is an interesting moment in time. Already there are several organizations that have started. I myself am an advisor to the Sustainable Development Goal Philanthropy Platform, which is looking at the role that philanthropy plays in achieving the SDGs. And today we are going to look at what I believe is going to be one of the key accelerants to achieve all the Sustainable Development Goals. What could be the role of technology, innovation, artificial intelligence? Of course, many people have been saying that technology could be a problem if we don't think carefully. And I'm in the camp that agrees. I think it's a huge opportunity, but we have to be very intentional on how we use technology and be careful that it doesn't increase the digital divide and shrinks it. But I am a huge optimist when we have people like Andrew, Desh, and many other brilliant people who care about the world. We can do amazing things with technology to accelerate all the goals. So today's theme is, what could be the role of tech innovation, AI, to advance the Sustainable Development Goals? And how can we do this via collective action? All of you in this room, all of us as a global community. And with that, I'll start introducing our speakers, and we'll start hearing from them. Desh Despande is a thought leader, a global thought leader. He is a very successful entrepreneur and a venture capitalist philanthropist. He's the founder of the Despande Center for Technology Innovation, MIT. He's on the board of MIT. We have MIT and Stanford minds here today. Great to have them together. He is also the founder of the Despande Foundation, and President Obama appointed him to be the co-chairman of the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So he has that perspective as well from the policy side. And Desh is also on the board of Akshaya Patra, the awesome organization that's Coke and Meaning. And he and his wife Jayashri are doing amazing work in Hubli in India and here in the US, working with vulnerable communities and looking at the sandbox model he'll be telling us about, to look at how can communities solve their own problems and how to empower them. And he walks the talk, which is what I love about Desh. When last 2 days, a lot of time with him. There are a lot of people think of a lot of things, but he actually does this. And he does it in Hubli, not in Delhi, not in Bombay. And so we'll be hearing from him. And also he's doing amazing things with universities. So they should also be telling us about what roles universities could play, not just MIT, many other universities, his other alma mater, IIT Madras as well. And then our other speaker, I'll introduce both speakers and then we'll start the chat. Professor Andrew Ng, a dear friend, I'm a huge fan of, known him for years. Andrew is, of course, the founder of Coursera, which has democratized access to education for all. And it's just been amazing to see. We have, I think, my friend Asha Jadeja Motwani. Asha, were you here? You're there, right? So Asha does this. I'm going to give an example of how Andrew's transformed the world. Asha does this amazing fellowship, Rajiv Circle Fellowship, where she brings the young people from India, not from necessarily top schools, from some other school, but they're very, very enterprising young people. And it's when they came here, some of them wanted to first meet Andrew Ng because they all learned how to code, not in school, but through Coursera. And they're doing amazing stuff. And Asha would take them to meet Sergey Brin and all the top people, but first they wanted to meet Andrew Ng because he transformed their lives. So thank you, Andrew, for doing that. Andrews also was involved in the Google Brain project in the early days. He's been a professor here, leading the AI work here, the AI Center at Stanford. He was a vice president at Baidu until very recently and set up the AI labs here in Silicon Valley, which some brilliant people joined. And he is now doing some other very interesting things. He's one of the top thought leaders in AI, a thought leader who cares very, very deeply about what could be the role of AI in helping society and has thought quite a bit through it. So we're very thrilled to have both of you here. Welcome, Andrew, Desh. Let's give them another round. We're going to start off, I'll ask a couple of questions from the speakers. We'll hear their thoughts, and then we'll open up to questions from all of you. We'll have plenty of time for audience questions. So, Desh, starting with you, question to you is, walk us through a little bit of your experiences. How have you seen technology transforming and helping society? And what are some of your own personal experiences? What have you seen? Also tell us a bit about what role do you see universities playing in this? And also tell us what could people like us in the room, people like Andrew, Silicon Valley community, what role could people like us play? What role do the people in Hubli or in rural Africa, India play? What do other parts of the world play? How do you see that happening? I know you have some amazing frameworks. We'd love to hear that as well.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I think it's, I do see some fellow MIT guys here, Ramesh Raskar, Mark Goldenberg in the back, my co-board member at MIT, and he's also on the steering committee of Desh Despande Center at MIT. So, nice to see you all. Maybe one way to frame this issue is that technology is progressing faster and faster, and we're going to hear a lot of exciting things from Andrew about all the good things that are happening. But the question is, how does that impact the world? And maybe, I think a good way to frame it is we can divide the world into...
Yeah.
Just press, and take this. Press it.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
How is that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one way to frame this is that technology is progressing, and how do we use that progress in technology to help two parts of the world? There is people who have disposable income and people who don't have disposable income. People who have disposable income, if they have a problem, they're looking for a solution, right? They're Googling for the solution. And in the last 50 years, we've developed an amazing ecosystem to actually cater to that need. That is, if we come up with an idea that the world has not seen before, and you direct it to some burning problem that these people have, who have disposable income, it'll find the route to the market. And we have developed angel investing and access to capital and open markets and way to distribution channels, Amazon, Walmart, all kinds of stuff. So I think that part seems to be happening, and it's going to continue to accelerate, which does build the economic growth, the GDP and everything else. But the people who don't have disposable income are just barely trying to get through the day. So it's not like those people are Googling and saying, well, how do I get clean water? How do I get this? How do I get better health and so on? So if you want to help those people, you first need to build capacity there and also co-create the solution that are relevant to those people. And I was just mentioning to somebody that, for example, innovating for that section of the population is very different than innovating for the people with disposable income. Geetika just said that this meal, local produced, local cuisine, is 15 cents a meal, right? MIT and Stanford are powerhouses of innovation. if I came to any of these institutions and said, please solve the problem in India for midday meal, they'll probably come up with a solution for $5 a meal, and they will not realize that it's $4.85 too expensive, right? So innovation has to be contextual, and it has to be relevant to the people who need it. And so I think we need to build capacity within this community. So for the last 10 years, we've been working on this quite a bit. And later on, maybe we can talk a little bit more about it in terms of how do you build that capacity among the people who need it. But once you build capacity, and let's say now this organization is doing 1.6 million meals a day, but we need to get to 100 million. So to go from 1.6 to 100 million, you need a lot of non-linear solutions. And those organizations now are fully capable of using a lot of the advances in technology and in financial engineering and everything else. So I think it's just a two-step process. So the people here who are interested in helping those people who don't have disposable income, don't start with the wrong question, because I find that most of the people start with the wrong question of saying, they're compassionate, with very genuine. I mean, you just can't question their compassion. But they always start by saying, what is it that I can give that I have? And most of the people have brains. So they say, I can give a solution. But that's the wrong way to lead, because it's very presumptuous of us to assume that we know the solution for the people who live on $2 a day, because their risk tolerance, what they need is very different. And also, even by chance, if we came up with the best solution, there's no capacity in those communities to absorb the solution, so it doesn't go anywhere. So instead of looking for a silver bullet to solve those problems, we first have to find ways to build capacity. And once you build capacity, then I think those people become capable of solving problems. As they solve bigger and bigger problems, they see roadblocks. And then we can use the technology and brains and everything else to overcome those roadblocks. So it's just a two-step process that we shouldn't forget.
Thank you, Desh. There's another question for Andrew. Andrew, tell us a little bit, how have you seen AI deep learning play a role in bringing positive change to society? And share some of your life journey experiences as well as what you've seen. And also share some advice for, we have many entrepreneurs in the room. What could AI bring to entrepreneurs? What kind of capabilities, opportunities going forward?
I think we live in a very exciting time because technology is improving so much, so rapidly. We see maybe especially AI technology, but other types of technology. So I think we live in an age where each of you is more powerful than a lot of people in almost any early phase of history in terms of your ability to go and change a lot of people's lives, millions of people's lives. And I think the world now actually supports that one person, maybe one of you, with the right ideas and right execution can go and change millions of people's lives over the next several years. Just to answer the last part of Radhika's question in a little bit greater depth, one of the major technology revolutions I'm super excited about is the rise of artificial intelligence. And today, AI can do so many things that just we could not do just a couple of years ago, right? And then maybe, when I was leading the Baidu's AI team, people actually used to ask me, what can AI do? Is this mysterious thing? What is AI? What is AI? So there's this rule of thumb that I gave my teams at Baidu, which is almost anything that a typical human can do with less than a second of mental thought, we could probably now, or in the near future, automate using AI. So for example, input a picture and tell me if there's a cat in this or not. You could do that in less than a second, and we do a pretty good job with that using AI. Or into satellite imagery, right, and estimate some local conditions based on satellite imagery. If a person could do that with a quick look at a photo, we could probably do that using AI as well. So it's a medical diagnosis task. A lot of radiology tasks, where there's some tasks that radiologists can look at and very quickly make a judgment. I think those tasks are ripe for automation as well. And I think the recent rise of AI really means that the set of things we can now automate with technology is suddenly much larger than even 2 or 3 years ago. Having said that, AI technologies has raced ahead. The leading AI technology is still accessible only to a relatively small groups of people, only the talents that can really execute on the bleeding edge AI is still limited. I hope it grow rapidly, but I think a lot of the work then is to take these new AI capabilities we have, and to figure out how to land it, how to take it to communities and products and businesses and communities that we think really need it. And maybe I'll share one other pattern that might be interesting that relates to something that Desh said earlier, which is that many of you know, but I think in eras of technological disruption, it tends to be the highly cross-functional teams that perform best. And I think a lot of what Desh was saying is, frankly, the product skill, right? You know, a lot of our failures here in Silicon Valley were when we spent months, sometimes years, building something, only to realize that nobody wanted it, right? We've done that. I've done that a bunch of times. Maybe quite a lot of us have done that a bunch of times. And I think that in eras where there's this brand new technology, such as AI technologies that just didn't exist before, the teams that perform best, frankly, tend not to be pure AI teams, because AI by itself isn't good for anything. Usually AI needs to be combined with deep product skill. And you know, it was very interesting. I gave a talk at the AI conference last December, and I asked the audience, how many of you know what a product manager does, right? And roughly 1/3 of the room raised their hands, and 2/3 of the room didn't know what a product manager does. Actually, how many of you know what a product manager does? Okay, cool. More people here. But this is a concrete example. And when I was working on products, some products have maybe like 100 million users, right? So that means that I have 100 million bosses, because whether I succeed or fail at my job is whether each of these 100 million people decide to use it or not, or whether or not they get a benefit from it. It turns out that having 100 million bosses is much harder than having one boss. But through the art of product management, we figured out ways to talk to a sample of these people, do A/B testing, do user investigations, and really try to figure out what these hundreds of millions of people, what these 100 million people need, so we can deliver something that actually serves them well. So I find that today, the best functioning AI or the tech teams to invent something really new tends to be very cross-functional teams with the tech capability, with the product capability, kind of to Desh's point, they can land in the local community, be in a rural village, in a developing economy, so they can understand their needs. But even beyond tech and product, I think in eras of technological disruption, to take something to market might require marketing, operations, business development, government relations. And I think a lot of the skill of today's entrepreneurs or impact entrepreneurs is the ability to build these cross-functional teams in order to do all of these things that are needed in order to create and take an innovation to market.
Thank you, Andrew. So it's interesting, the common theme emerging is collective action and cross-functional, and at the high level at the SDGs as well as within small teams. And that combined with technology could be very powerful in AI. My next question for you, Desh. Tell us, we talked a little bit about what you all have been doing. Tell us a bit your vision for the future, the next 15 years. What role do you see technology, innovation, and social innovation? We had an interesting discussion yesterday. Your perspective on social innovation is as important as tech innovation, or more perhaps. What do you see the role of these two going forward to achieve the sustainable development goals? And also tell us a bit about the role of universities.
Right. So, I think there is previously, for example, the companies that we started in 80s, let's say telecom companies, the way the products were sold was we sold it in US first for 5 years, and then we took it to Europe for 5 years, and then we took it to Japan, and then after 20 years, we sold it in India, China, right? So that used to be the cycle. So there was no innovation in those markets. All the innovation happened here, and at some point they would reach those markets. But now, there is a lot of innovation happening in those markets, mostly in terms of the cost-effective solutions at scale. And designing products, like Andrew was saying, is all about designing certain functionality at a certain cost point. So in some ways, if we sit in a bubble here, we may just lose the opportunity of knowing what is the cost point, because I think we would totally miss it. For example, let's say medical diagnostics. I mean, there's a lot of people now working on this strip, nanotechnology strip, a paper strip that can do a blood test for 10 cents. Now, that product can never be introduced in US because for two reasons. Number one, it will disrupt the market so much that they would never allow it. And secondly, it will not have the quality, right? And that will be the reason why it won't get introduced. But so what will happen is that product now will easily be introduced in a lot of these markets. But once you hit, let's say, 10 million or 100 million users of that technology will get perfected and will come back here, right? I mean, that's the reverse innovation. And that process is well understood. I mean, how many of you know Clayton Christensen from Harvard? All of you know? Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, he always talks about this example of transistors to vacuum tube to transistors. When vacuum tubes happened, the radios used to be very big. When transistors came along, you could make that radio in a very small size. But then they couldn't sell it. They couldn't sell it to sophisticated users because those days, the bigger the radio, the better it was because that meant higher quality, more sophisticated. So finally, they started selling it to teenagers who wanted to take a little thing with them and listen to music and everything else. So it was a low end of the market. But once it matured, it took over the whole thing. So there's going to be a lot of things that go back and forth. And so people need to participate in all these markets and not just get stuck in one market, in which case you miss the overall marketplace. So I think it's important to do that. So in terms of universities, I think we run a university innovation network where we have about 100 universities that come every year now to Lowell, Massachusetts, and it's growing 20% a year. And the basic theme and a lot of them are not so much Harvard and MIT and Stanford, but more Kansas and Ohio State and all these universities. We have 6,000 universities in the US. And so the basic theme of this conference is that universities are essentially in two businesses. One is to expand the human knowledge, another one is to train students, educate students. So the question is, if you expand knowledge, can you expand it in a way so that you maximize the social impact and economic impact? And if you do come up with an idea that's very powerful, then can you train students so that they're entrepreneurial enough to take those ideas and make something happen with them, right? And so it's pretty exciting that a lot of these people are interested in sort of global problems and engaging in all these things. But I think we have an opportunity to make that whole system yield a lot more, both in terms of knowledge expansion, because we spend $50 billion a year funding university research, and we can get a lot more out of that. And also we train a lot of students, and a lot of the students now are not getting jobs, right? And we need to make them more into problem solvers. So one way to look at this whole economy, because this economy will affect everything globally, is that there are three types of people in this world. Some are oblivious to everything. Some see a problem and complain. Some see a problem and get all excited, right? And the only difference between a vibrant community and an impoverished community is a mix of these people. So impoverished communities, whether in US or in India, they become impoverished because problems become chronic, they get deadlocked, people try a little bit, and then they can't solve it. So they feel helpless, they feel victimized, and then they complain. And then complaining is the only thing they do, right? And so the steady state we have reached politically is that impoverished communities will sit around and complain, and then the government and the big foundations and the think tanks are supposed to come and solve those problems. But when you take a solution to those people, they'll go like this and say, tell me, why is it good for me? Because it comes back to this not having co-created the solution and not having the capacity to absorb it. So I think we have to change our whole education system so that complainers become problem solvers, which you see in plenty in Silicon Valley here. But this kind of training is applicable to all the societies. So we've been doing this program both in US, it's called E for All, and in India called the Social Innovation Sandbox. And it's a work in progress, but I think it's looking pretty promising.
Thank you, Desh. That was very interesting, the framework of how we look at three categories and how just the mix changes things. Andrew, question for you is, again, the next 15 years, You talked a little bit, but what do you see the role of AI deep learning? How do you see transforming society? And also another question, people often fear AI, so how can we help decrease that fear? And then a third question too, that is there a role AI can play in a deeper collaboration between people across the world? Whichever ones of this you want to take.
So, to answer that one, AI, impact of AI over the next 15 years, we have been making this analogy that I think AI is the new electricity. So about 100 years ago, about 100 years ago, we didn't really have widespread access to electricity, so a lot of I guess the sun hasn't set yet, right? But with electric lights or projectors or refrigeration, and starting about 100 years ago, with the rise in electrification in the United States, we transformed almost every major industry. And I think today, with the rise of AI, we see a surprisingly clear path for AI to similarly transform multiple industries. To that, I am especially excited personally about our education and healthcare. I think Coursera has made significant headrows. Really, Coursera, Khan Academy, right, the scalable ways, and CK12, right, Akshaya is here, right, has made significant headrows into delivering scalable education, making that broadly accessible. There's still a lot of work to do, but I think that the digitalization of technology, has helped us take many steps forward. And maybe one pattern you see in a lot of industries is first comes the digitalization, and then that creates data because people are using a product to see what happens to the data, and then the data feeds the AI. So a lot of industries go through this ways where first comes the digitalization, then comes the data, and then comes the AI. And I think education now has been digitized sufficiently that there's now that data to feed to the huge hungry wall of AI. So I think AI now is in a very good position to do much better, customize, personalized tutors, give students personalized teaching experiences. I think that wave is actually, I was at EdTech conference, ASU, GSB ASU Summit just a few weeks ago. And very surprised how many AI talks there were in the EdTech summits, which is a change compared to 7 years ago. Another vertical that I'm excited about is healthcare. I think that, and I think to kind of to Desh's point, a lot of these innovations were first launched in the developing economy. Really partially because of the leapfrog effect, right? Without the incumbents, without the regulatory barriers. I talk to a lot of healthcare entrepreneurs. The ones trying to launch products in the US, I feel like they spend half their time trying to innovate and help patients, and spend half their time trying to think about how to deal with regulation. And I have many healthcare entrepreneurship friends, multiple companies that I'm friends with, seem like they're saying, just not launching first in the US, go launch first in Kenya or some other country, and then eventually figure out how to take it back to the US. And we've seen this leapfrog thing happen in so many industry verticals, range from, since I spent a lot of time in China, telecoms is one of those, telecoms, the payment system, really advancing in ways in China that were much faster than the United States, and we see these innovations only much later coming back to the United States. But I think global access to healthcare, global shortage of trained medical staff, and even though I'm optimistic about the future of education, I don't know how we're going to train the tens of millions of medical personnel that we'll need for these developing economies. And I think that AI automation, from assisted automated diagnosis to maybe just full diagnosis in places where there is no doctor, to automated tools to help with management of chronic conditions, like AI to help manage diabetes. I think that those will be giant categories that will first make affordable healthcare accessible to a lot of developing economies, and then in the very long run, will make healthcare much higher quality in both developed and developing economies. Now, one of the challenges that this will bring about is this fear of AI point that Radhika mentioned. I think the one aspect of the fear of AI is this evil killer robots will take over humanity or something like that. I think that worrying about evil AI killer robots taking over our planet today is a lot like worrying about overpopulation on the planet Mars. Someday I hope we'll colonize Mars, and someday maybe Mars will be overpolluted and there'll be all these starving children on Mars. And you can say, hey Andrew, this is an impact community. How can you be so heartless and not care about all those starving children on Mars? And my answer is, we haven't landed on the planet yet. I just don't know how to productively work on that problem. Let's work on the starving children on Earth first, before worrying about the dying kids on Mars. And I think none of us, the AI technologists, see a realistic path to this AI evil killer robots thing. Although it turns out some companies have very funny fundraising strategies where they use fear mongering as a way to fundraise, which I don't think is very healthy. That's another story. I do think the real fear for AI though is in job displacement. So I was talking about healthcare. You know, if any of you have children or you yourselves are in medical school studying radiology, I mean, AI is starting to understand radiology images really well. I think you might have a perfectly fine 5-year career in radiology, but a 40-year career in radiology, frankly, I just don't see it, right? Let's be really honest. And I think, you know, we often talk about the truck drivers, 3.5 million truck drivers, the jobs will go away, the call center operators. I think this will affect both blue collar and white collar. I've had these very strange experiences where I would lead a team to go inside a call center, and I've, you know, sat like a foot away from these call center operators and interviewed them about their job and tell me about their lives, their family. I learn about their job and what they actually do. And I have this very strange feeling where I've been talking to this person that I've got to know a little bit, and I know that my team is going to go home, and I'm going to write software that will automate maybe a third of their job. And start working these call centers with hundreds of people in them, and I know that, you know, software will soon be written, right? Maybe by my teams, maybe other teams, that might make a third of these jobs go away. And start with a third, and then eventually it'll be 50% of these jobs, and then eventually maybe 70, 80, maybe 90% of these jobs will be automated. And frankly, when I talk to a lot of these people, ranging from call center operators to, it turns out truck drivers see self-driving cars because there's so much PR, but I think call center operators, they don't see what's coming, frankly. A lot of radiologists also don't see what's coming. And I think that if AI would create, on one hand, AI would create tremendous wealth, right? And certainly here in the United States, the East and West Coast elites, you know, done pretty well. But to be perfectly honest, I think we've left, this is controversial, but I personally think we've left a lot of the country behind. And I think if we want to create not just a wealthier society, but also a fairer one, then I think we have important work to do to make sure that everyone has a shot at meaningful work and can make a living. So, you know, so how do we actually address this problem? I'll just tell you, it's not a lot about this. I have a lot of economist friends. So depending on which economist report you read, you know, let's say that 30% of all of jobs, even in the United States, also some developed economies that do a lot of outsourcing. Let's say 30% of jobs may be at risk of automation over the next 25 years. You hear a number, maybe it's 50%, maybe 15 years, whatever. So 30% of jobs at risk of displacement is a very scary number. The flip side of that is that maybe as much as 70% of jobs are not at significant risk of automation over the next 15, 25 years. That's a more positive part of this. And in fact, if that's 70% of jobs, for a lot of them, we actually can't hire enough people to do a lot of those jobs, right? Ranging from nursing to a lot of jobs in healthcare. I think, wind turbine technician has been one category that's been growing surprisingly rapidly. And software engineers, obviously, but maybe we can't all be software engineers. You know, but there are many categories of jobs we just can't hire enough people. So I think frankly, I don't see any problem, any solution other than education to solve the skills mismatch. And I think that just as, you know, many decades ago, we had the New Deal, I think it might be time for society to arrive at a new deal. My favorite proposal for the United States, certainly, but elements of this will apply to developing economies as well, would be conditional basic income, not unconditional basic income, but conditional basic income, in which we will pay you if you're unemployed, but the condition is that there's an expectation that you will study, right? So don't just, you know, I don't know what people do, watch NASCAR or whatever they do, study, because this increases the chance that you will gain skills that enable you to re-enter the workforce and contribute back to the tax base that's paying for this whole thing. So I think we need creative solutions such as that to create a new engine for society, so that we keep, you know, growing the economy, capitalism, which I actually believe in, continue to thrive, but also create wealth and fairness for all of society.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Desha. This fascinating insights. And the radiologists out here, beware.
Now we'll move to audience questions, but I see that I failed to acknowledge some leadership team members. JJ, will you stand up for a second? And if there's any others from the Stanford Angels leadership team, and also Akshaya Patra folks, please stand up. And I know we have several from the leadership team. Thank you. So now to the most fun part, audience questions. I'm going to request, since I'm sure we'll have a ton of questions with these two brilliant, inspiring speakers, say who you are and keep your question very short, and we'll take and say which speaker, target them to one speaker or the other, and we will take 3 questions, 3 or 4